In today's video, we're going to talk to you about the Architecture Guide to SaaS Migrations.
We want to look today at how you can get into taking an existing Sitecore XM or Sitecore XP platform solution and gradually migrate over into a Composable DXP.
So why are we here? I want to start off with that question. Why is the industry moving to SaaS and the composable architecture? And what are the benefits of this move for our customers? And is composable really for everyone? So let's dive in. Companies need to focus on the activity that drive business value. This is one of the only ways to make it in this fast and continuously changing world. If you want to compete, you need to put all your energy in your differentiator and highlight what makes you unique as a company. It's all about focus. If you spend your time, and with time I also mean focus, on distractions, your competitor will go ahead and succeed. And this is why companies are removing those distractions as much as they can. In short, companies are really looking at their business with following rule. If it is not impacting revenue, it is a distraction. The second angle of focus that we're seeing is that the company wants to use that right tool for the right job. They don't want a tool that does everything okay. They want one tool that does the job perfectly. I always like the Swiss Army knife metaphor. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's a great example. In the late 1880s, the Swiss Army commissioned the production of a new folding pocket knife for soldiers. We've probably all seen one. They built this for the soldiers so they can do all kinds of things in the field. So they could open cans of food, they could service and assemble their rifle. You all recognize that knife with a large number of tools and blades, all packed into a single knife handle. And the Swiss Army knife really is a great tool. But if you look at it, it's never the best option for any job. Think about it. If you would have the choice to slice your bread, would you take the Swiss Army knife or a bread knife? If you need to tighten a screw, would you use the Swiss Army knife or a power drill? The knife does an okay job for countless tasks, but is not the perfect tool for any. Removing distraction and the metaphor of the Swiss Army knife translates very nicely in the movement that we're seeing today in the digital industry. So let's translate this to a typical DXP solution. A platform DXP is feature-rich and expected functionality out of the box. It comes with solutions for content management, email marketing, marketing automation, digital asset management, analytics, and many, many more tools. The platform then is hosted. And hosting exists again out of multiple parts and services. It starts on the bottom with hardware going up to software compliance, moving into different services offerings, installation, support, monitoring, and disaster recovery. It's critical that hosting is handled correctly. It really needs to be stable, reliable, and fast. But for companies that boost their revenue with web experience, at the end, it's still a distraction. So hosting is all about that ownership responsibility. And we all know those different variants of hosting, starting with on-premises, like you see here, where you're responsible for all the different parts of hosting. Moving into infrastructure as a service, where you remove the responsibility of hardware. Then removing the OS and platform and going into platform as a service. Going all the way with software as a service that removes the full responsibility of hosting. Hosting became a commodity. Companies want to outsource hosting and the responsibilities that comes with it. They're seeing this really as a distraction, and this has been causing that movement that we're seeing for SaaS in the last decade. For DXP solutions, we're seeing that companies are selecting tools that solve business problems and address opportunities that they see and have today. If they want to address content management, they want to select the best tool for that job. They don't want or either need that platform, although the platform provides all those features and functionality out of the box. But all those features and tools and functionality also comes with overhead and limitations. Hosting, scaling, and integrations are the main identified limitations. So really, if you look at it, it's all about focus. Removing the responsibilities of hosting helps companies to focus on the tasks that drive business value. Followed then by executing those tasks with the right tool for that job and not a Swiss Army knife. And this is exactly where the Composable DXP is all about. As the name says it, it's a composed DXP. It's unique for every customer, creating that unique DXP that fits the business need of that customer. Using the combination of content sources, cloud applications, hosting options to build out that DXP, all build out with your favorite technology and programming language. So it's all about complete both technology, but also about vendor freedom. You don't need to fit your business processes into platform features or tools or technical requirements that a platform might have. Composable DXP is all about making best-of-breed marketing stack work together. And this includes existing marketing stack, as long as the marketing stack drive business value. That's the one criteria of a composable DXP. The marketing ecosystem is endless. There are more than tens of thousands of vendors and solutions out there that solve business problems for companies. It's all about selecting and using the right tool for the job. As Sitecore, we're focused on those principles of composable DXP. We're here to deliver standalone, best-of-breed solutions that can integrate with any marketing stack. Next to that, we want to make it easier to build out your composable DXP solutions by providing native integrations between the Sitecore products, so you can focus on delivering the best experiences. Our product integrations will be open and based on industry standards, so APIs can also be used to integrate with any other marketing stack.
Now that you understand a bit better about, what a composable DXP is, why you might want that, we're going to take a look at how you would go through a few scenarios to migrate to something like that. So obviously, you could just build directly against your new composable system. You won't need as much guidance for that. So we're going to focus more on what a gradual migration would look like. We're going to look at a very simple Sitecore XM scenario and also a more complex global Sitecore XP scenario and how you could take a few steps. Now, we're not going to get into every possible option. So we're not going to focus on things like Sitecore Order Cloud or Discover, the commerce angle things, and we'll try to keep it tightly confined just so we can get some example migration going and you can see some of the options and ways that you have to think about things as you gradually migrate yourself over from a platform technology into a composable DXP. Now, as we go through these scenarios, you might start thinking to yourself of specific things that would apply to the scenario you're in. Every customer is unique, every implementation is unique, and so there's really only one answer that applies, and that is, it depends. And hopefully what we can do is help you understand what it depends on. What are those options? What are those questions you have to ask that'll help you understand how or when you should make one decision over another? Now, one thing we should get into before the scenarios is composable even the right solution all the time?
That's a very good question. And of course, the answer to this question is it depends. Platform or composable? Seriously, it's a very good and valid question. This question comes up a lot. If we look at it, the answer really is it depends. A platform DXP brings a lot of value out of the box. It comes feature-packed with solutions, as we discussed before, solutions for content management, marketing automation, email, analytics, and much more. But what you see is over time that your efforts will increase to maintain that value from the platform. So you might run into issues with scaling the platform globally or integrating with new marketing stack, or even being forced to adjust your business processes to fit in that platform. The composable DXP comes, of course, with less features and solutions out of the box. It contains those standalone best-of-breed solutions that you need to integrate to that composed DXP. With a composable DXP, you wouldn't start with all those solutions and all these functionalities at once. For example, if you're looking to deliver a meaningful web experience, you might want to start with a solution that contains content management and a personalization solution. Over time, you will grow your composable DXP when your business is ready, selecting the right tool for that moment in time. So later in the digital journey, you can extend to marketing automations and email marketing. Whatever you need, again, in that moment of time. The value that you can get over the composable DXP is endless. There's no limits, because it's all about integration. you can integrate with one of those tens of thousands of marketing stacks out there. Is there a new trend in marketing land that you want to benefit from? Go ahead and integrate it. The sky is the limit. There's pros and cons to both platform and the Composable DXP. They both provide a solution towards that same problem. So it really means it depends. It depends on the customer and the requirements that the customer has. I've put on a few example considerations that can help you select the right solution for your customer. Really, how I look at it in a practical way, if I was a smaller company in one country and only serve a small audience, so I don't need to really worry about global scaling or effortless scaling. I have a small team that will execute all marketing tasks and all initiatives and all channels. My company there would be low on the digital maturity. So I currently have no existing marketing stack that drive business value and that I need to integrate. I would clearly go for the platform DXP. All the tools being integrated will basically help you and provide a lot of value and will help you build out that digital practice. But then on the other side, if I had a company that was very digital mature and I already have marketing stack in place that drive business value and achieve company goals and need to be integrated, I would go for Composable. Other requirements that will help making that decision is effortless scaling. If that's a requirement, again, Composable is a much better choice there. Organizational structure is also a big difference. What we're seeing is that companies that have different teams that execute marketing, for example, even digital marketing that's split up. So teams that do email marketing, web content management, social media, etc. Composable is the better fit because every team can then use the tool that they provide and the tools in the marketing stack that address their business problems. So as you can see, both solutions address different business requirements. And as Sitecore will offer both platform and composable solutions. So let's dive into scenario 1. Jason, are you ready to kick it off?
Now, scenario 1 is very simple. We are looking at a team that has always been updating on the latest and greatest Sitecore. They've gone through so many upgrades, they really don't want to do it anymore. And they've been building headlessly. The team has multiple layers of responsibility. What they want to do at the top here is they want to take their applications and create this composable DXP. They want everything to be SaaS. They've already started this. They've got a DAM, they've got a CDN, they've started doing static site hosting. And below this tier, they're using Experience Edge from Sitecore and also some content delivery nodes to do a Next.js application. They're using headless services built fully headlessly. Underneath that, from a marketing service perspective, they're primarily just using content. So they want to be able to use a very simple XM infrastructure, and they've even looked at things like how can they use something like Managed Cloud or containers or something to offload even more of their responsibility into a managed service. Now, while the marketing team has been hinting at personalization, hasn't happened yet, so we're just looking at an XM build, and they want to get rid of this existing infrastructure. So how do we move this forward? Well, the transition is really easy. XM Cloud, being a SaaS hosted version of XM, has the same API layers for headless services. Experience Edge APIs are the same. So the Next.js application, it can translate over very easily. Now, this does mean that there's a content migration because we're over in a self-hosted XM and we need to move it over into XM Cloud. So we do have to plan for that whole piece of the effort. So why would we show this? This seems too easy, right? We want to show the ideal state. We want to show you something that's going to make transition to XM Cloud really easy. I know most teams are not in this scenario right now, but if you can see something that looks like it's going to transition well, maybe you can figure out from where you are today how you could get to something that looks like that. Now, from a downside perspective, things to watch out for. Content migration was involved. Content migration is never trivial. Somebody's already got some piece of data in there that's going to make things weird. So you got to plan for regression testing. You also need to look at how do I get rid of these content delivery customizations? You might be using APIs. You might be using content resolvers, or perhaps you have things like special, custom code running on Sitecore processors or something like that. None of that is going to exist in XM Cloud. You don't have a content delivery server anymore. So we need to remove that. Think headlessly. How would we put this into our Next.js application? All right, so that was easy mode. We are going to take a look at something a little more complex. Something with maybe a little more technical debt in it. This team has hundreds of sites. They've been developing on different versions. They've got different regions. They've got multilingual. They've even done different deployment styles and development methods. They have multiple marketing teams. They've got personalization heavily embedded throughout many other sites. They've got big, huge global corporate brands, and they've also got smaller campaign sites that spin up and spin down, generally regionally. So their scenario, they have multiple XP instances running. Some are on V9, some are on V10, and they have different kind of XDBs running as well because they have privacy regulations and compliance needs. So they don't have just one central XDB either. Now on top of this, they have the need for global delivery. They are a huge company. They've got so many brands. They have to reach everyone everywhere. That's a lot of content delivery infrastructure they're working with right now. And they want to get rid of the responsibility for this. Now, from a development perspective, they've been building in MVC. They've built in SXA. They've done React JSS. They have done some Next.js. They have all kinds of different stuff. There's basically no simple path for them to go from this into what we saw in scenario one. Now, on top of this, as an organization, they have already started their move towards Composable DXP. They have a SaaS marketing automation tool. They have existing tools like DANs and CDNs and stuff. They want Sitecore to fit into this infrastructure. So how do they turn their Sitecore XM and XP functionality into functionality that fits in this Composable DXP? Let's see how we get started with that. So first up, we should bring Personalize into the mix. Sitecore Personalize is an easy add-on. You can set up the tenants. It's a simple tag. We can just do tracking at this point. This is going to allow us to build up data so that later when we migrate over, we've already got a lot of visitor data in there. And we can do this on all the sites gradually. Now, from a benefit perspective, we get a lot of benefit without a lot of effort. So that's a great point. We're going to have that session data. We're going to be able to leverage that later. And we're also setting ourselves up with two systems of XP and Personalize that can drive personalization, which means we can do a gradual migration. Some sites and teams can start moving those things into Personalize. And as sites migrate over, we're reducing the amount of XP rules that are running. New sites start popping up, move them into Personalize instead. So we reduce how much we have to migrate later. This also means that the teams themselves can be trained up gradually. So we can roll out the tool to different teams at different times around the world and have them kind of learn and pick it up in a gradual manner. Now, there are things to watch out for. So one downside is that any organization this size likely is having people looking at analytics data, which means we need to have some kind of way to incorporate this new system that's in here because we got new data now. Now, you could choose to just ignore this data until a later date when everything is moved over, but we should be considering that in the project. How is this data going to impact analytics reporting? The other thing too to worry about is you've got two sources of personalization happening now. So probably best not to have like the same site using both systems, or at the very least kind of lock it down to a page or a section of the site level. You don't want to be able to have two systems suddenly impacting each other. And you also, from a implementation perspective, you want to be able to debug where is the personalization happening? Which system is driving the change? All right, we're going to say that we have found the right place to go and everybody has gotten Personalize up and running. It's probably happening kind of gradually, but for the purposes here, we want to draw a line and say, now everybody's ready to go on. Now, the next thing to tackle is going to be that content delivery layer. We want to make sure that we can reduce how much content delivery infrastructure that we have to manage. That means going to the edge. So what we're suggesting here is to migrate to using something like Next.js with the headless services, using Experience Edge and a static site host, something like Netlify or Vercel. That way, all that visitor data, everybody who's coming in, all that traffic, that's going on the static site host instead of heading back to the content delivery origin. Experience Edge also allows to support those static sites with a global delivery of content, again, so these sites, when they're doing like incremental static regen, don't have to go all the way back to the origin every time. All right, so that sounds great, but to get access to that, we're probably going to have to do an upgrade on some of these sites. We're going to need to get the latest, greatest that's going to be closest to XM Cloud as possible. We want to be able to have the Experience Edge for XM connector. We want to be able to have things like the Next.js headless services, and we want to be able to get that new feature in 10.2 that has the static site publishing. Now, static site publishing allows you to kind of like do a wrapper around an MVC or an XXA site, so you don't have to do a full rebuild, but still get some of the benefits of statics. Now, it doesn't work exactly for every single scenario, but it's another tool that we have in our box to be able to get some stuff done here. Now, from a benefits perspective, now this structure of Next.js, Experience Edge, static site generation, this is going to give us a lot of benefit. We're going to be able to get really good core web vitals, plus our ability to reach out into new regions and get new traffic in different campaigns is going to be really easy to scale. Not as much responsibility on us, more focus. We also have the ability now to do a gradual move over. We don't have to take every single one of these hundreds of sites and rebuild them all at the same time. We can gradually move them over into Next.js. We can use things like the static publishing to, kind of choose what's the right option for which site do we want to move when. So we're always getting the best benefits for the effort we're putting in at the time. Now, there are some things to watch out for. I mentioned doing an upgrade to something like the 10.2 version to get access to all the tools we want. Well, that means we're doing an upgrade. And if it's a really old version, like a version 6 or 7 or even an 8, the effort required in doing the upgrade might not be worth the benefit depending on what the site is. So you want to be able to look at that and say, okay, should I just rebuild directly against something like XM Cloud and Personalize together instead of trying to do this kind of step for that particular site? The other thing too is that when we talk about migrating, we need to be cognizant that XP personalization is still running. So we can't get rid of all the content delivery infrastructure if all the visits are still coming back to the origin to get that personalization. Now, it could have started earlier, but this means that we need to be planning if we have heavy personalization sites and our goal is to reduce content delivery, how do we transition those sites over to Personalize at an earlier step? That'll make sure that we can get that reduction in content delivery that we're aiming for in this stage. Now, the final thing is about static site publishing. As much as I wish it was, it's not magic. There are limitations like there's no multilingual. There are things that are limited in media library usage and forms. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the guide which you should check out. But essentially, you need to look at the guide, look at your site, figure out, is it a match? If it is, great. If not, we want to make sure that we're looking at one of the other options to be able to migrate that site over. Okay, we're going to draw another line. We're going to say we've gone to the edge. Everybody's good. We're reduced our content delivery. Now it's time to start ripping out all that XP infrastructure. We want to get rid of XConnect and XDB shards, and we want to get rid of all the personalization rules. We don't want anything from XP still running after this. Now that might mean that we need to move some XDB data. Now the SmartHub CDP does have APIs to do kind of like a batch import, and we should look at that data and say, what's the data we need to move over? We've been running Personalize for a while now, so we probably don't need to worry about the things like session data, recent session data, because we've already gathered it. We also don't need to move things like anonymous contacts. Somebody who's anonymous in XDB, it's going to be hard to match up over into an anonymous thing in Personalize, so we can probably skip that. The other piece that we need to look at is, do we want to migrate all this data? So when we think about XP, XP is using XDB data in the context of a platform tool. So it's being used for marketing automation, email marketing, personalization, everything under there, right? But when we move to Personalize, now we're moving into a tool that is focused on personalization. That means we may not need all the data. We just need the data that drives personalization. And as we do this, and there's fewer and fewer requests coming in to the content delivery layer for personalization, well, we can get down to like virtually none or no CDs altogether because we're not having to use those anymore. All right, so there's a lot of benefits here. Big one is there's no more XP infrastructure. All that marketing automation and XConnect, all those services, all those databases, we don't need that anymore. We're down to a very simple XM infrastructure. And it looks a lot like scenario 1 when we wanted to transition over to XM Cloud. This also means the organization has fully transitioned into headless personalization with Sitecore Personalize. So not only are they getting all this great headless personalization on their website, but now they know how to use this tool. They can start using this on other channels that are not their website. Let's take a look at some of the things to watch out for. The first thing is that we probably had some customizations in the CD layer, and we really need to be getting rid of those as much as possible, just like in scenario 1. But a big challenge here is moving the personalization rules. Sitecore XP doesn't do personalization the same way that Sitecore Personalize does. They have a different vision for how this is done. That means it's not a simple one-to-one, pick it up, drop it over here. That's not how it's going to work. So we need to be thinking about digital strategy. What's the business reason behind this personalization? What are we trying to achieve? And how would I achieve that the Sitecore Personalize way? So we need to plan for that in our project. We also mentioned XDB data migration. We need to look at a system this size. They might have a CDP in play that already exists. Maybe we need to be looking at an integration to their CDP as part of this project and not doing XDB data migration because maybe the CDP is the source of record. We also have the concept of migrating to XM. So when we talk about doing a transition here, I kind of glossed over that, but there are a couple ways you could do this. You could start with your XP and in place kind of go to a CMS mode and start ripping pieces out. But you run the risk of like leaving some things behind, not doing it properly, making your transition to XM Cloud harder. Or, which is probably a more recommended way, is to do a lift and shift, much like when you're doing an upgrade, where you set up the new infrastructure, you move over to it so you know it's clean, you know it's the right version. Especially since we were doing upgrades, that might be a good step to be doing at this stage. But it does mean another content migration. There's more effort. We need to balance, is that effort worth what we're going to get out in that particular scenario? So we do have to make a choice here. Now there are some what ifs. We could just ignore XDB data migration altogether. That might be an option for us. We might be able to skip it altogether, integrate with the CDP. We might be able to already have enough data gathered by Personalize when we introduced it earlier. Maybe that's enough for this particular customer. Another thing, though, to consider is that we have a customer here with multiple teams in multiple regions, and they had isolated XDB before. Different compliance needs, different privacy stuff, maybe just team needs as well. So we may not be looking at one Sitecore Personalize. Some teams might need a CDP. Some people might need a personalized tenant that's isolated in a particular region. So we might have to look at a more complex than one box Personalized. So there might be multiple things getting set up here. All right, but we are going to assume another line in the sand. It's probably all these hundreds of sites moving at different paces, but we're going to draw the line of everybody has now gotten off of XP and onto XM. And now we want to take care of all the last little bits of static site publishing and content delivery customizations. We need to make sure that that Next.js migration is fully complete. And that's really step 4. We are going to make sure we have no reliance on content delivery, so we are ready to go to XM. Obviously, the work could have started earlier, back when we were identifying what to do with those older MVC sites. But what we're doing here is saying no further. All of that is gone. We are fully headless, fully on the edge. No more static publishing, no more content delivery customizations. Now, just like in scenario 1, this is getting us ready for XM Cloud. This is getting us ready to not have dependencies, and it makes the transition a lot easier. We're going to have to watch out for session data and content delivery customizations, just like we did before. Now, because we're running a lot of SXA and MVC, we do need to probably rethink how we've been approaching the solution. There might be a more headless approach that's needed. So that's something just to keep in mind. Now that's been a lot. I've been walking through a whole lot of stuff so far. So we're going to do a little bit of a rollback and go over what we just covered.
Yeah, we're getting close here, and we've taken a lot of steps. So let's do a quick recap and see what we've just done. A lot has happened that brought us to the current architecture that we're seeing here now. We started off with adding Personalize to your solution. So now we're tracking and harvesting all the insight and interactions of different visitors. We are moving all the personalization to that headless system, Sitecore Personalized. This allowed us to remove all the XP infrastructure and simplify down to XM only. So we have no experience database, no XConnect, no XP functionality used anymore. Personalization is driving that whole experience. All applications are delivered through static site delivery layer. So Sitecore CD servers are not being used to serve any content or any experience to visitors anymore. Multiple instances of Sitecore XM content altering are all in different regions and publishing out to that experience edge. Everything now here in this solution is fully headless. And really, if I look at it, it feels a lot like scenario 1 now.
So now it's time to rip out that XM layer that we have here. By transitioning into XM Cloud, just like in scenario 1, the Next.js applications are going to be able to do a smooth transition. We do have another content migration to worry about. This one's a little more complicated though. We have multiple XP instances that we're running, multiple content repositories in different regions. If we just jam that all into one XM Cloud, there's probably going to be some content conflicts. There's probably going to be something that doesn't work out there. So we need to plan around how are we going to handle that scenario. Now, from a provisioning perspective for XM Cloud, typically we recommend going by a project or team type of approach. So you might have multiple XM Cloud instances. One way to know about does things go together is shared content. If you have things like shared data sources or content reuse, that's probably a good indicator that all that stuff should go together into a single XM Cloud. However, you might have teams that have need for personalized, extra special area just for them. Maybe they need their own XM Cloud instance. We also don't have geo-replication in the initial versions of XM Cloud. So that means that a team that's on the other side of the world may want something that's closer to their region in order to have the best benefit for them. So these are all things that we need to take into context. So these are all things that we need to take into context when we're deciding what we're going to do. Now we have gotten rid of all that XM infrastructure. Now we've moved to having everything in our nice vendor solutions area. We have our composable architecture. We're fully headless now. And now it looks more like a network of applications, things that are the right tools for the right job, and we're pulling them together and assembling the final solution. And that means we can focus. That means we can focus on delivering more business value, delivering new functionality, or finding another tool, finding the other right piece that we need and integrating that so we get the right pieces at the right time.
Before we close this video, I want to wrap up with the 4 themes that we repeated throughout the session. Number 1, use the right tool for the job. Choose the tool that you and your customer need in that moment in time. The second one, transition to fully headless implementation and work with that composable architecture. Embrace it. So this way you can remove all Sitecore infrastructure down the way. Important with everything what you want to do. Take steps and plan ahead. That way you also can benefit of the efforts, right? So you can get the benefits of the composable and the new SaaS solutions. But important that is you decide when you make next steps. And most importantly, really, it depends. Understand that each scenario and each customer is unique. And the key is to understand what options do you have for that scenario and choose the right one for your specific setup. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our presentation here on Composable DXP and being able to move over gradually from a platform to a composable. If you have any questions, please make sure to reach out.